IVM.
Have you ever wondered why women don't do more crime? Well, we're here to tell you. There's misconduct all the time. Women are thieves and murderers.
That's gross misconduct.
Con artists, money launderers.
Criminal misconduct.
Financial fraud that's hard to track.
Takes some planning, but still misconduct.
Even breaching a contract.
Well, that's more civil though.
It's misconduct. Misconduct. We tell you all about women that suck. Things that make you say, what the? It's misconduct.
Hello, and welcome to Misconduct. We're a podcast about Indian women that are also criminals. My name is Raghavi.
And I am Nisha. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about Madhuri Gupta. So who's Madhuri Gupta? She was a junior diplomat with the Indian High Commission in Islamabad, Pakistan, who was arrested in 2010 for allegedly violating several provisions of the Official Secrets Act 1923. The Official Secrets Act, from now on we shall be referring to it as OSA, among other things. It penalizes espionage. So what did Madhuri supposedly do? She fell in love with a young officer of the ISI, which is the Inter-Services Intelligence, the premier intelligence agency of Pakistan. She then proceeded to pass on classified documents to him about India's foreign relations and internal matters. There are many rumors about her intentions and motives, and it's all over the news. One of the motives which was talked about was that she was unhappy with her promotions and her service conditions. But it was most likely that she was ... seduced by a Pakistani agent.
Gasp!
She was sentenced to 3 years in jail for passing on sensitive information to Pakistan's ISI. So this is the story of Madhuri Gupta, who is now branded a traitor to India.
Yikes. Actually, do you want to hear something stupid I did while I was writing this episode?
I always want to hear what stupid thing you did.
Yeah, you really trip on me for no reason, dude. So her name is Madhuri Gupta, right? So I'm reading, I was reading for almost a week before I was like, okay, let's sit down and actually write this episode. There's too much nonsense there. And the thing is, at some point, I don't know when that really happened, I stopped writing the phrase Madhuri Gupta, and it just became Madhuri Dixit everywhere.
I was expecting that.
Shut up, okay. It's not like it just happened. I don't even know when it happened. And I'm reading stuff. I even copy pasted things like quotes, and it says Gupta, but then later I would say Dixit. Made no sense, okay. And when I found out what I did, I was like, wow, that is beyond stupid. And I did Control F replace. Except I only replaced the word Madhuri. Instead of Madhuri Dixit, and I replaced Madhuri with Madhuri Gupta. So everywhere it became Madhuri Gupta Dixit. It was a nightmare writing this episode, man.
Why didn't you replace Dixit with Gupta?
That is a great question. Anyway, before we start off, a quick disclaimer. This podcast literally has the words true crime on the artwork. So yes, it is very likely that we will discuss themes that are possibly violent or gory, definitely criminal in nature. This podcast is not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised. Listener discretion is advised.
Unless the whole time they're staring at the artwork.
I mean, it's beautiful.
It is.
So why not? Shout out to our friend Shruti.
Yes.
Who got the artwork through.
She was brilliant. Cool. So before we really get into Madhuri, let's go over some basic concepts, such as what is a honeypot? So honeypotting is a very old espionage technique. Essentially, you develop a sexual or romantic relationship with someone who you know has access to some information that is probably useful to you. It could be for political gain or to get state secrets or just to have some leverage over something or over someone through like blackmail or extortion.
Right.
A more fun name that we came across for this is sexpionage.
But I prefer the word honeypot. I think it just sounds more like it's just very you won't really realize what it's about. You would think it's like something you do to like attract Winnie the Pooh or something. Like a pot of honey. Nobody really like when I first heard the name, I didn't think this is what it was. But then when you say sexpionage, it's like, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's just the two words put together.
The concept is so common in modern espionage. For example, in 1975, a former assistant FBI director, William C. Sullivan, tested before the United States Senate, saying that honeypotting is just a thing that agents casually use. He said, the use of sex is a common practice among intelligence services all over the world. This is a tough, dirty business. We have used that technique against the Soviets. They have used it against us. So it's very common. So some honeypotting schemes apparently could even take like years. Like the person has to lay the trap, spend years getting to know them, establishing a
Right.
relationship. And I don't know, I guess agents are trained for things like this. So
Of
they'll
course,
probably
yeah.
be very, very good at playing the part. Like you won't know that you're being sex-spionaged. So a very popular example of honeypotting was conducted between East and West Germany before they were unified. It was called the Stasi technique. It was common for East Germany forces to have like young, handsome male officers, and they would pretend to be from West Germany and would meet West German women posted at the embassies and woo them and get confidential information. And West Germany was not stupid though, and they would just plant their own honeypot.
Can you imagine if if West and East Germany were both planting honeypots at the same time,
Yeah.
and there were two spies from East and West Germany, and they just met each other thinking they're honeypot, like they're basically honeypotting each other, okay?
Yes.
And it'd be so stupid. They'd be on the phone, and they'd be like, "No, you tell first. No, you tell. No, you tell me first." And all the while, the East and West German, the intelligence forces are listening on the conversation, okay, and they're like, "Hey, somebody just say it already."
Terrible. Oh, that would be hilarious. So,
That's true.
another very popular use of honeypotting was used by the Nazis, where they used a brothel called Salon Kitty, where women were trained to seduce German dignitaries, foreign agents, and diplomats. Actually, the story about Salon Kitty is quite interesting. So, I
Yeah.
invite everyone to look it up whenever you have the time.
Mhm.
More recently, you might have heard of honeypotting in many fictional accounts, and the most famous one being freaking James Bond.
Of course, man. Dude, I don't even understand how he's still a spy, okay? The number of times he's been seduced by some rando woman. Like at this point, he should have his badge taken away, his gun,
He
whatever
He
whatever
should.
they give spies. It's just so stupid.
That one cool car that transforms into everything.
Yeah,
Take it away.
everything. It also whiskey with the ice still like there. Whatever, man. Bond movies annoy me so much.
So I have seen one Bond movie
What?
in my
Which one?
entire life. I think it was Die Another Day.
Hey, that's not bad. Hey, Pierce
Thanks.
Brosnan. That's
Oh.
fine.
So,
That's good.
but you know what I've seen many of?
Mhm.
Marvel movies, and like Black Widow from the Marvel movies is introduced in Iron Man 2 as kind of a honeypot, I guess. But like she
Oh,
doesn't stick with it. She becomes a good guy. But yeah, honeypotting is hella common.
that's true. I didn't think about it that way. I have been trapped by honeypotting as a child.
As a child.
Okay, so there was this dude in my kindergarten class. His name was Nikhil. I'm sure he's still alive. His name is Nikhil Patel. Okay, and he was we used to call him, like, he used to bring papads to school every day. That was just his thing. Okay,
I know this dude. You've told me about the papad guy.
I've told you about it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, sometimes he also used to sit next to me and then just like talk to me. He's just a nice dude. Sometimes he's like very chubby,
Hmm.
very fair, chubby, like maida, okay, like a big ball of maida. And he would just sit next to me and talk to me and be sweet. And then he would just ask for my juice and I would give it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Honeypotted at the age of, I don't know what, 3?
5? Sure.
Five.
Yours is worse. 3, it seems. But yeah, Nikhil Papad Patel. If you're out there, if you went to Aaron English High School in Dubai,
Yes.
kindergarten 1 and 2, section T. Please reach out to me. I'm okay with being honeypotted as an adult as well. But sorry, let's just sort of get into this. Is like a huge deviation for no reason.
Yes.
The Official Secrets Act of
Hmm.
1923, or OSA, which is, we don't have to call it that. It's quite
No, it is the OSA.
the OSA. What is the OSA, guys? The OSA is India's primary national law which governs all matters of secrecy and confidentiality where it relates to the country's governance. What does that mean? Basically, it means that the government thinks something is secret and it should not be revealed to the public for whatever reason. Then revealing it to the public effectively becomes an offense. And this is there are many scenarios for this, but essentially the law sort of allows the government to withhold some information from citizens as well. So even if you think about filing an application under the Right to Information Act, the RTI Act, think again, because there are exemptions under the RTI Act just for this. More recently, in 2019, the Supreme Court said that the RTI provisions do supersede the OSA, but it's in a very, very limited context. It doesn't just generally apply to any sort of... so you can't just go up to the government and be like, hey, give me all of your defense plans for the next several years. And they'll just be like, yeah, okay, take it here. That's not going to happen. That's just not going to work. So the act does apply to all citizens of India. But more importantly, it applies to government servants. And the reason for that is because who is most likely to have access to official secrets? Government officials.
Of course.
And there's a huge legislative history for this act, of course, because it's so restrictive. It has its roots in the British colonial era. The original law was passed in 1904. And the purpose of the original act was to prevent a lot of nationalist newspapers from the independence struggle era, to prevent these newspapers from printing something derogatory about the British colonialists, right? It made sense in that context because the British were not particularly subtle about suppressing political uprisings.
No, they were not.
They were not. So yeah, in 1947, when we did get independent, we had the ability to do away with the law, but we were like, nah, let's keep it. Let's keep this law. So very quickly, just so you have an idea of what this law covers before we really get into Madhuri's sitch. The act doesn't really define what the word official secrets means, but it prohibits certain actions. Okay. And for the sake of today's episodes, I'll tell you what's super important for you. The first thing it prohibits, spying. Obviously. So spying is actions like going to a prohibited place or passing on information that can be useful to your country's enemies, communicating some sort of an official password or a code, just a bunch of things that can be harmful to India's sovereignty and integrity and security.
Okay.
The most important thing is you don't have to really even show that the person was actually guilty of it. It's usually enough that the circumstances of their conduct sort of exhibited that it was harmful to the state. And because the nature of spying can really vary, the jail time is between 3 years and 14 years if you are convicted.
Okay. So don't be shady.
Yeah, basically don't be shady seems about right.
Fair.
That really summarizes all of OSA actually. So number 2 thing that you should remember is you can't talk to foreign agents.
Okay.
This is basically the same as spying, except once you know that stuff, you just also tell someone. And that someone is supposed to not, I mean, if they're not an Indian or they're working for a foreign state, in those scenarios, obviously, you can't release that information. Again, the information that you pass on should be useful to the enemy of a country. Like, you just go to some foreigner and you're like, hey, I don't know, you can't say random shit like that. I don't know, man. You can't say random nonsense like, that doesn't make any sense. There'll be something that's useful for the enemy of a country, you know?
Okay.
It's not really useful to them.
Right. So if you go and tell someone vada paos are best in Mumbai, it's fine.
I mean,
if you go and tell them, this is where you have to enter for Taj Hotel, if you want to do it sneakily, then it's a problem.
Yes, that's, oh my God, this went in a really dark place. But yes, the third and the more dumb one, the dumbest of the rules, is wrongful communication of information. Now, why do I say it's dumb? Of course, it covers some things like access to official information, where you were like careless enough that you give it off to somebody. But it also covers scenario where, like, if you were just sitting in a coffee shop and you just leave some like confidential information around and somebody picks it up, then what you have done is committed the crime of being stupid. And the crime of being stupid comes with jail time of about 3 years.
Oh my God. But you know what? I agree. If you're stupid, you should go to jail for 3 years.
I mean, fair. I kind of also agree with that.
Cool. So, and that's pretty much what the OSA is all about. Is it a colonial hangover? Yes. Is it in place to protect the state? Yes. Is it supposed to be a deterrent for government agents that might think of screwing over the country? Yes. Is it possible to hide behind this act to prevent otherwise public information from being easily available? The answer will surprise you. Yes. Have there been multiple efforts to review this act and see if it's even applicable in the current political context?
Hmm.
Surprisingly, yes. So it's yes to all of these things because no law is perfect. But this is the law, and that's the law that Madhuri Gupta was penalized under.
Mhm.
And have other people been caught under for these offenses? Yes, so many. Sources
Mhm.
say that since 2014, there have been like 50 arrests under the Official Secrets Act.
Mhm.
One of the most recent cases was decided in 2019 when a person named Asif Hussain from Kolkata was identified
Mhm.
as a Pakistan national who was communicating sensitive information regarding the Indian army. He received
Yikes.
9 years jail time under the OSA.
Whoa. All right.
Yeah.
On that note, let's take a really quick break for you to like go and digest all this information. If you want to quickly Google the OSA, go for it. You're not gonna be able to interpret it in the next like 2 minutes. And after the break, we'll talk about who the woman was, what did she do, what was her vibe, guys. Let's find out.
Welcome back after the break. We are talking about Madhuri Gupta, the branded traitor of India. So, who was this woman? Madhuri Gupta, we don't know. That's we have no idea who she is. There is no information. There are so many articles that talk about her, but nothing that actually says anything about her early life.
Right.
But here's what we do know. Madhuri was a member of the Indian Foreign Services.
Mhm.
Hey, she might have known Zoya Khan if Zoya Khan was not a scam.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Zoya is not even. I don't think she would have gone to any of the same like training institutes and stuff. Yeah, of course not.
For more information on Zoya Khan, please refer to episode 3.
Is this a crossover episode?
So Madhuri Gupta, she was in Group B, which is not hired through the UPSC Civil Services exam. Group B enrollment has a separate, less competitive entrance exam.
This is still the IFS, right? The
Yeah,
Indian
yeah.
Foreign Service, right?
For the Indian Foreign Service. So if you get through, you start at a lower position than Group A,
Mhm.
because those are the guys who cleared the UPSC exam, which is hectic as hell.
Of course.
And okay, this is generally a bit like hush-hush, but Group A and B members are involved in quite a bit of rivalry.
Mhm.
Group B members can still be promoted to Group A over time, but there are allegations of discrimination against the Group B members, and Group A members are usually preferred for promotions, even with less experience,
Right.
just because of the exam that they've cleared and the position that they hold. Remember this, though, because it becomes very important later on.
Mhm.
So, we know that she was appointed as the second secretary at the Indian High Commission in Islamabad. She was working in press and communications wing of the High Commission. At this point of time, I would like to say, samesies. The moment I read this part, I'm like, hey, I like this girl.
It me.
Yeah. So working in press and communications essentially made her like a liaison officer between the High
Mhm.
Commission and all of the other embassies. So many newspapers tell us that that in 2010, at 52 years old, she was a spinster.
Shut up. That is the biggest crime of all. Lock her up, I say.
Well, Madhuri was also in service for almost 30 years. She had worked in embassies and consulates in Kuala Lumpur, Croatia, and Pakistan, including administrative roles in Delhi as well.
Mhm.
She also appears to have been fluent in Urdu, which is a good reason to send her to Pakistan.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. Urdu is a beautiful language, though.
Mhm.
There is one account by Lamat R. Hassan, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, who claims that she knew Madhuri. She says
Mhm.
apparently Madhuri was really into fashion and living an organic lifestyle. She was kind of, joyful in a way. She would just like freely hand out her visiting cards to people in Pakistan,
What?
which is definitely not advisable. But I feel like she's one of those people who's just like, kya hoga?
Yeah.
You know?
I know what you mean. I get it.
Yeah. So she also learned Urdu just to get that posting in Pakistan. She hired a tutor for 2 years to achieve that fluency. So
Wow. Okay, so it's not like she didn't have any ambitions or talents or goals. You know?
Yeah.
Like she was like a pretty well-rounded person. I mean, if you learning Urdu so fluently within 2 years, to be able to get a posting in Pakistan is like a
Yeah.
pretty great deal. So I guess it's just the stuff after that, stuff that happened after that sort of muddled her talents and her
Yep.
ambitions, I guess. So what did she do, guys? So we found out that in April 2010, Madhuri had been arrested for passing on some secret and sensitive information to certain Pakistani intelligence agents. So she was approached by the ISI, which, as you mentioned earlier, is the intelligence wing of the Pakistan Army, I think. Two of their handlers basically came to her in the year 2008. Their names were Mubashir Rana and Jamshed. She called Jamshed Jim, which indicated that she may have been a little close to him in some way. So they gave her a SIM card and a mobile phone. Using this, she set up a personal email account. And she would use this account to send information to them. So she apparently also met them many times in safe houses in Islamabad. So she was frequently in contact with them pretty much since 2008 till her arrest. And what sort of secret and sensitive information are we talking about here, one may ask? There's a lot, guys. There's a lot of stuff that she would tell these people. One of a very useful document that really helped us sort of put together all of these charges was a decision by the Delhi High Court in 2016, which revised the charges that the prosecution had originally filed against her. We'll get into that a little later. But this court order tells us what the prosecution said was in her received and sent email folders. So this is the stuff that she had in there. Okay, what? She forwarded many documents that relate to terrorism in Kashmir to these guys. 2.
Okay.
Some of the documents included major developments in Pakistan and India's external relations. We don't have elaborations on this, but this is what is stated. 3, and this is something a little more specific. There were documents about hydroelectric power plants that were being set up in Kashmir.
Oh my.
Yeah. 4, she apparently attached documents that had discussions and activities, meetings that were attended by the officials of the Indian High Commission in Islamabad. This is a little funny in a way, but in March 2010, Madhuri had apparently sent a list of phone numbers of officials in the High Commission, and this list was classified for official use only. So I can only imagine some dude. Imagine if this leaked to a bunch of telemarketers. It would just be so stupid. Sitting in the High Commission, you get a call. And they're like, sir, I can give you a loan.
Sir, credit card.
Yeah. Congratulations, Raghavi Ramesh. That's usually how they go.
Worst, dude. Worst.
It's so stupid. There's more things. Number 6, she forwarded information regarding India's diplomatic relations with Afghanistan. And also apparently some talks that India was having with certain terrorist organizations.
Whoa.
She also forwarded details about the High Commission's security detail, including those of, diplomats, obviously, some Indian armed forces and their family members.
Oh my God.
Dude, literally all that's missing in this list is my own mother's maiden name. That's the only thing that's missing in this. This is a ridiculously elaborate list of stuff you should just know you're not supposed to send out to anybody.
Yeah.
But the prosecution obviously had a very good case to say that this is extremely prejudicial to the safety and security and interest of India. They also argued that revealing a lot of the information was very detrimental to India's interest in the international stage. So that's really what the prosecution's overall arguments were. And you would find that it fits very neatly into what the OSA says that you should not be doing.
She also sent one hilariously ridiculous email on 22nd December 2009. So in this email, she said that the Deputy High Commissioner's wife hates Pakistan and all Pakistanis and expects all India-based people to have the same attitude. Now, in itself, this is derogatory and stupid for the wife of a diplomat to say.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the wife of this diplomat is in Pakistan. The country that she spoke about so harshly, and like a country that historically, I don't know if you know this, guys, we've had turbulent relationships with them.
What? We have turbulent relationships with Pakistan. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
So the prosecution said that by revealing this information, Madhuri had effectively endangered the safety of a senior Indian diplomat stationed abroad in a country with adversarial relations with India.
Yeah.
Which is so valid. Like, she has to be careful. I mean, obviously, at this point, you can start to see that she's not doing this like for time pass.
She's really not. It's a pretty elaborate process.
Yeah.
Also, now since we're on the note of her sending stuff through email, there's an Indian Express article that tells us that she created a personal email account to forward these documents.
Right.
And the email account was madsmiles at gmail.com.
Terrible.
Yeah, man. She's a 52-year-old woman. Just come on, buddy. Just Madhuri.Gupta 44 or something. I'm sure there are other Madhuri Guptas that have Gmail accounts before you. But Mad Smiles is actually, this must have been a recommendation by Gmail.
Oh no. Worst.
That's the worst. So yeah, sorry, go ahead. This is what I wanted to really interrupt to tell you. It's just too funny.
We've also seen statements from major political players regarding her. One of them was by Union Minister Kapil Sibal, in which he kind of vaguely job shames her. He says, "I'm not trying to discriminate on the basis of class, but a person who has not been properly trained and brought up in the values of the services can perhaps be more susceptible to foreign inducements easily. Nevertheless, given the fact that all those working in Islamabad know that they are under watch and being targeted by Pakistani intelligence, which is on the lookout for chinks, that they were able to penetrate the embassy is shocking." So this pisses me off on like multiple levels because it's a very PR thing to do. People in comms are the ones who have way too much information, and they know that it is their job integrity to not be like talking about all of this stuff
course.
outside, right?
Yeah.
And it so happens that the people who are usually at the bottom, the ones that are not considered at all. So for someone to say, "Oh, it's so shocking," well, you probably sent like all of the documents to the guys right at the bottom and said, "Take a printout and give it to me before my meeting." And like the person who's taking a printout is definitely going to take a look. Or like you
course,
sent it to
yeah.
their email address. You're not inviting them into the meeting. What else are they going to do? They're going to read through the document.
That's true. And the ones at the bottom will have that much information. They're doing all of the groundwork. It just makes sense. Yeah.
And I think this is why, like, just treat them with more respect, man. If you do that, they will take their job more seriously.
Right. Yeah.
The jobs that I have worked, and I have had like lists of like all of the top people in Bangalore, all of their information in one Excel sheet. And it was literally forwarded to me to my Gmail ID to take
Whoa.
printouts of. The only reason, I mean, of course, I have my own integrity, but like if my job had treated me like shit,
Of
at
course.
some
Yeah.
point
yeah.
of time, out of problem, like, here, you also take. You call, telemarketer, sell credit card.
It's like how employers say, "Oh, I'm so shocked that people are leaving my company. Why is that? Why is the attrition rate so high? Because you treat them like trash.
Yeah.
If they leave, you're like, "What do you want?" And they say money, and you say no. Say, "Okay, I want like a real like balance between my work and personal life," and they say no. They say, "I want to have a baby and leave," and they're like, "No." This is literally nothing that you give them. It just totally makes sense that they would get pissed off. Can I get what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So further, initial reports at the time of her arrest said that she was in the information wing of the High Commission and not the political wing. Mr. K.C. Singh, a former secretary with the Ministry of External Affairs, said in 2010 that she could not have been privy to sensitive documents. I don't agree with this, but
yeah, I get it. We just discussed that. Yeah.
yeah. But he did agree that this entire case, it was a penetration. He also very casually said, "We earlier had a penetration by East Europe, but this is a first from Pakistan."
What? This is an actual statement that this guy made?
Yes.
He just
Yes.
he just
Just
casually
casually.
announced
Yeah.
that before this current breach,
Yes.
we've already had a penetration, which is an odd
Yes.
choice of words, but sure. Penetration by East Europe.
Just
Who casually just announces something like that? It's a freaking breach into our security, like our country's security system. Who's so casual about it, man?
Yep. So many senior officials admit the revelation had caused a major embarrassment. No shit, Sherlock.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so this arrest, I mean, obviously she got arrested for this in April 2010, right? And just a little after this was supposed to be a major South Asian conference of country leaders for the SAARC. And this was supposed to take place in Bhutan. So this news goes public. It's a complete national embarrassment. On top of that, India had to go to this, like this stage where they were supposed to be like a superpower of sorts within SAARC. So the embarrassment was like 200x. Okay, it was just cringe all around, and I'm sure nobody in the government was like happy about this at all. Yeah.
There is also one other particularly funny observation by the Indian Express. This was from an article in April 2010. So back when the press kind of knew about her, but she was like still in custody. So there was not enough information out there for the journalists to get like truly excited. So the Indian Express, some intern must have decided for the heck of it, let's just dig into her Facebook account and see what's there. On her Facebook account, they made two major observations.
Okay.
One, she had friends in India that she was in touch with.
Okay.
Number two, here are some of the Facebook pages that she was following.
Oh no.
CNN International. 2, I need more sleep. And 3, Golgappe.
Are you serious? I was likely probably also following I Need More Sleep.
I was probably following Golgappe. Hey!
Yeah, that sounds. Hey, she's so relatable, man. On that note, I would recommend we take a really tiny break while I go get some Golgappe for myself, actually. I am quite hungry. I'm going to get a snack. But yes, guys, we will see you on the other side of the break. We will discuss motives. Motives is the fun part of this podcast. So we'll see you right after. Welcome back from the break, everyone. So we're going to get right into it. Why did Madhuri Gupta do what she did? So there's an April 2010 article by the Indian Express where it's sort of essentially Madhuri is confessing to her crimes. Okay, so she's saying that this is when she was still being interrogated by the Delhi police, raw. Anybody who had any interest in her was like, hey, come, let's quickly talk to her. So she said that she was disgruntled with her job and that she wanted to teach all the arrogant IFS officers a lesson. She also said that she passed on the information to the Pakistani officers without any monetary gain. So she admits it. She passed on the information.
Yeah.
But she said it was purely because she was just pissed off and she didn't really want to make any money off of it. And there are a couple of events that happened that sort of led to this. Apparently, sometime in 2008, she was chastised in public by a senior IFS officer for failing to complete certain tasks. And I mean, come on, man, like she's a human person. I'm sure she has some pride. It just is normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that it justifies anything, but I would understand why she'd be pissed off about it. Let's also remember, like Nisha mentioned earlier, she was a Group B officer. And the rivalry between Group A and Group B officers is already pretty well documented. So it's very likely that she just sort of felt belittled, or maybe even underutilized in a way at the High Commission. And she was pretty set on doing this. That much was very clear because after she was arrested, apparently she said to one of the security officers that was holding her, she said, "What took you so long to get me?"
Wow.
Yeah, just outright. Like, so she was just like, I was going to do this in any case. Why are you so bad at your job?
Wow. The audacity.
Yeah, that's true. She also actually denied having any personal relationship with her two ISI handlers, Mubashir and Jim. So the official story, of course, so far is that she was a pissed off employee.
And then comes July 2010 when her charge sheet was officially filed. This was a 700-page charge sheet, by the way, because that's just how, like, a mountain of evidence that they had. They also had like 30 witnesses lined up to testify.
That's nothing.
In the charge sheet, something unusual came up. It turns out that Madhuri was having an affair with Jim. And they wanted to get married.
Sure.
So the charge sheet that was filed indicated that Madhuri was essentially a victim of a honeypot. That didn't excuse her crimes, but I guess it gives us an understanding that she was likely in a vulnerable position, which is starkly different from the position that she herself took earlier in the year when she was confessing. Contents of the email between Madhuri and Jim showed that she was quite taken by him. The authorities also managed to procure letters written to Jim in which Madhuri's intimacy with him was kind of established. She refers to herself by the name Javeria in her letters. In one such letter, though, and this is kind of sad, Madhuri had written, "I have done my best for him and for his sake, but he treats me like a dog. He has no consideration for me, nor does he make any effort to understand my position. until we are married, until I am in the present job, I have to behave accordingly. But Jim has strong objections to my socializing with any Pakistani. I'm not used to sitting at home in parda.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that is heartbreaking.
it is.
I mean, obviously, it wasn't a healthy relationship.
No,
Not
that
that
at all.
any relationship with someone who's committing treason and and your handler from the opposing intelligence organization.
Actively trying to honeypot you.
Yes. I feel like in general that relationship between these two people might not be healthy.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But she was clearly so into him
Yeah.
and she seems so upset about like how the relationship is going. Kind of feel it, but you know what, girl, don't shed tears over a man.
You messed up.
No, I mean, yeah, she did mess up, but like just feel bad for her, man. Like I mean, you remember we've read a lot of these reports where they really focus on how single she was, which is so sad. We'll get into it a little bit later, but it's just stuff like that just really is genuinely upsetting. But yeah, it's just heartbreaking. The story is just genuinely sad.
She was also apparently paid an amount of 1 lakh rupees by the ISI handlers. And this is just like some unnaturally small amount for someone who's basically selling state secrets. It's not like she can use this money to retire from her job or something. If she did take, if she did take this money, we can say with certainty that she has no idea how to bargain.
She would have gone to them and she'd be like, Jim, I want 2 crores for this. Jim would be like, we can give you 1 lakh. And she was like, okay, I love you. That's just so sad. I mean, that also falls into the honeypotting, right? Even if like the payment would be just nothing because the real treat is that she probably was genuinely in love with him. Like that's what she was getting out of it. So it's quite sad. So Madhuri's lawyers, they would go on to accept that it was a honeypot, but they would essentially frame it as her being a victim to it, effectively sort of taking her agency away by virtue of that defense, They consistently maintained that she was innocent, but still agreed that she was entrapped. And the lawyers actually ended up painting this picture of this sad, lonely older woman who was looking for love.
Man.
And that's really sad. But the fact is, despite whatever the scenario was, it doesn't really even matter, that she felt that she was tricked or whatever it was. The fact is, the evidence against her for the actual acts that she did was so incredibly overwhelming. The stuff that we listed out that were in the Delhi High Court order, the list of stuff that she passed is all actual things that they found it in the servers and stuff, in her emails. It's not stupid. Like essentially what happened was, this is what the police recovered. Okay, they recovered 5 laptops. This aside from her phone and SIM, of course. 5 laptops, 42 CDs, 21 floppies from her residence. You remember floppies?
I do remember floppies.
Floppy disks.
6 MB will fit in it.
Yeah, one extremely pixelated photo of Hrithik Roshan is what I used to have for floppy. So like that's how much stuff, like they recovered all of these and they found so much in there. The BlackBerry phone that she had gotten from Jim had 25 emails at least back and forth between just her and Jim. This is not even just this is not even just stuff about like what she was giving to them. This is just conversations that she was having with Jim. So there was so much evidence that the motive barely matters. It doesn't matter that she must have been tricked because the law is not even framed that way. The law just is, did you pass this on? You did. Well, now you're screwed.
Yeah. So I guess don't be shady.
Don't be shady. That seems like a very general pro-life tip.
Yes.
Is do not be shady. But you must be asking now. She did get caught. Yes, we know this. But did she have her day in court? Yes, of course. So as you mentioned earlier, at the age of 52, Madhuri was detained by a special police wing around April 2010. So the thing is, they had actually been tracking her for almost a year before that. The Research and Analysis Wing was tracking her both in Islamabad and her house in New Delhi. So obviously they were doing this because they wanted to gain enough evidence to actually nab her. But I can't help but wonder, between that year of her getting tracked, how much information was she passing on to these guys? I mean, the smart thing to do would be to feed her wrong information. So they were giving him, Jim, wrong information. But I don't know if they did that. I actually have no idea. But there's not one thing that Raw did that was genuinely smart. They brought her back to India from Islamabad in April 2010, saying that she was needed for some work with the SAR conference that we spoke about earlier, the one that was
Oh,
happening
yeah.
in Bhutan. So they brought her back to India.
Hmm.
And then when they brought her in, Raw was like, psych. And then they just detained her.
Aha, bamboozled.
Bamboozled. So yeah, so she was detained. And she was questioned by everyone from Raw to the Intelligence Bureau, the Delhi police, just anybody who was like, I would like to speak with her, please. They were like, sure, go ahead. And eventually, I mean, she was detained for a long time, but finally she was arrested on 22nd April 2010.
Oh.
What were her charges? Initially, she was charged under sections 3, 4, and 5 of the Official Secrets Act. These are 3 provisions that I very condescendingly explained to you earlier in this episode. She was also charged under the Indian Penal Code for criminal conspiracy.
Oh.
At first, the prosecutors charged her under a part of as a provision of the OSA that would only give her 3 years in prison. They revised that petition, saying that she actually deserved the 14 full years that particular punishment provides for. The Delhi High Court allowed it. They said, yeah, her charges should be changed because what she did prima facie looks like something that would invite this particular charge.
Right.
What was really surprising is that she was never charged under either the National Security Act or for sedition.
Huh.
I'm very surprised by that because that's something we just very casually throw around nowadays. So I don't know. I mean, it's surprising that she wasn't charged with sedition at all. Maybe because what she did, like evidence-wise, spying just seemed like the best way to do it, I guess. Those are charges that would stick.
I guess.
Yeah.
So in January 2012, Madhuri was granted bail after 21 months in being in prison. And she maintained throughout her trial that she was innocent and that her actions did not meet the charges that were filed against her. In May 2019, she was convicted under both the OSA and the IPC. The additional sessions judge said the conduct of the accused in passing on sensitive, secret information in light of the documents proved on record and evidence led by the prosecution categorically proves the charge. The judge also refused to grant any leniency. He said, undoubtedly, from a person of her stature, it was expected that she would act in a more responsible manner than an ordinary citizen, as she was at a high position of trust. But her actions tarnish the image of the country and has caused severe threat to the security of the country. Therefore, she does not deserve any leniency in punishment. And I agree with the judge. I agree.
Yeah.
However, she gets only 3 years instead of the 14 years that the prosecutors asked for.
Congratulations, I guess. Good for her. There's also something very interesting that I came across in an article which quoted a former special director of India's Intelligence Bureau. This guy also headed RAW for some time. So he apparently said, this is all, we don't have a full name for this because they didn't actually give his name. It's just like a source. So he says, and I quote this, as a security precaution, we always say that single people shouldn't be posted to such embassies, as without a family support network, they can get very lonely. And this is interesting to me because is the presumption that if you are single, then you are incapable of doing your job?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, because that's nonsense. It's not like married people, don't cheat on their spouses or like they're like some beacons of faithfulness or something. I mean, I don't think it's fair to completely divest her of agency. I think all the conversations around her, from the court to the charges that were filed, everything that, the papers were saying till the end, till she got convicted, and even her own lawyers, I understand the lawyers, they wanted to play, they had to do what they had to do to get her out. I understand that. But essentially it came to a point where she was completely stripped of any sense of like her own independent thought or agency. And the thing is, like, as much as she might have been trapped, by Jim, by promises of marriage or whatever, it doesn't really change the fact that her actions were that of a consenting adult with a sound mind.
That's right.
Doesn't change anything. And the fact that she was taken advantage of doesn't change anything in relation to the fact that she committed treason. It doesn't change that. In fact, I think she was quite aware about what she was doing.
100%. Huh?
There's one more thing. I'm not sure if you had seen this. There was this interview that Times Now had conducted where they invited her and they were like, hey, let's I want to talk to you.
Ooh, after she got out of jail?
Yes, after she got bail. So Times Now was like, hey, we have this exclusive interview with Madhuri Gupta. We're going to learn everything. It's going to be amazing. And they hyped and hyped and hyped it. And then when the actual interview happened, she was like, yeah, jail was hard, I guess. And then they were like, okay, tell us more. I mean, how did this happen? What did you do? How did you, like, who is Jim, whatever. And she was just like, oh, so the matter is sub judice and I can't really talk about it. And they kept asking, okay, they were like, hey, tell us more. What made you do this? Why did you move to Islamabad? And she's just like, matter is sub judice, matter is sub judice. I can't tell you anything. And she trolled the hell out of them because she knows she can't say anything to these people. But she's just like, I'll get my face out there. It's cool. She got her hair nicely done and she went there and she was just like, I can't say anything, guys. Sorry, but jail was hard.
Actually, this is something like, as you were saying, something that's important that, we should bring up. And this is the idea of this podcast, right? Where we're telling people that, hey, women are not just victims of their circumstances, where like women are not just like poor, whatever, like thinking of love and chose the wrong path. No, she clearly has agency. She knows what she's doing. She's selling this country. And it's not for love. Come on. Like, maybe that's one of her motives, but there's so many other things as well. Right? So please give her that. Let her be the bad person. Recognize her for her crimes. Before we wrap up, there are two articles that really stuck with me when we were researching this. The first one is an article in The Print from 2018. It's titled, Falling in Love with Pakistani Spy Cost Madhuri Gupta Reputation, Career and 3 years in Jail. So this article paints a picture of like a woman that has drifted from her job because of love. her love for this Jim made her effectively give up her country. And then 4 days later, an article in OP India ripped apart the article in print and it was titled...
I think it's Op India.
No, I think it's Op India.
Sorry, it ripped apart the print article.
Yeah. So it ripped apart the print article because it was titled, As Shekhar Gupta's The Print Romanticizes Treason, Here is why Madhuri Gupta is being sent to prison.
Hey, that rhymed also. How cute.
Oh, yeah. It's basically that one uncle who doesn't understand love marriage and he's like, Enne de love pulavla.
Yuck.
That's what it is. And basically the article goes on to clarify that this is not a Bollywood movie. She was a consenting adult who chose to throw the country under the bus.
Yeah, I mean, fair. They're not wrong, but the print is also not really wrong. I mean, surprise, surprise, people can be two things. Things can be two things. I mean, the print was slightly romanticizing it, but they weren't wrong that that's what she fell for. And as much as I'm not a fan of Op India, as much as they are saying this, they're right. She is also a consenting adult. And yes, this is why she's being sent to prison. So yes, it can be two things, guys. What? Nuance. Aha. On that note, on the note of nuance, let's recap this whole sitch today because we threw so much information at you. Let's have Nisha run us through a cute little musical recap. Just get you up to speed very quickly. Nisha, would you like to take over, please?
Gave away my country. I spy with my little lie. It wasn't for the money. 'Cause I spy, I'll tell you why. Underpaid, undermined, underestimated all the time. Got my way, I'll make you pay. Went to jail, but I lived to slay another day. Fell for Jim, that was stupid, I agree. But I spy with my little lie. Betrayed my land, betrayed by a man. When I spy for the ISI.
Whoa, that was really good job, Nisha.
Thank you, girl.
That was so beautiful and dark. and upsetting, actually. This whole thing has been quite upsetting.
Yeah.
She just basically sold the country.
Yeah.
You
She
know,
did.
it's like a very twisted Veer Zara.
Oh God. Worst.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? You should be similar to our Troiloko episode where we didn't have one mention of Devdas. You should be very
Oh,
proud that we have not mentioned Veer Zara even once this
that's
entire
true.
time.
That's true. Very
So,
cool.
yeah.
I also have not seen Veer Zara.
Okay, that's just what I was trying to say is we were subverting expectations. That's what this podcast is about. Subverting expectations till you die. But as long as you're here, I hope you had a great time listening to us. As usual, we have episodes out every Wednesday. Please keep a ear out for that.
And you can get all of our information on the blog that we have. You can even catch up with us on Instagram. You can find me at just Nishful Thinking. That's just.nishful.thinking. And you can catch Raghavi
At ragi.dosai. Our Instagram handles and our blog are in the description of this episode. Please go ahead and follow us. And if you want to know more about our sources and what we read for this episode, you'll find that in the blog as well.
and we will see you on the next episode of Misconduct.
See you guys.